welcome to season 3, where we're starting up the season with The Handmaid's Tale, and this is our group discussion.
By?
All right. Oh, The Handmaid's Tale by Margaret Atwood. There you go. Voila!
Oh my goodness. Voila! It's done. This season, we're doing all banned books. Now,
And
Sarah, can you tell us why this book was banned?
I could. Actually, this book, Margaret Atwood is actually quoted as saying it's been banned by states, libraries, and even like whole countries have banned this book over the years. It's a
whole
very
countries?
banned book. Yep.
Do you know what countries?
Yep, hold on. I'll look it up.
It's been banned for being sexually explicit, violently graphic, and morally corrupt. Well, I guess dystopian novels are like that. Isn't that the point?
That's the point, totally.
Yeah.
Do you know that Margaret Atwood says that she doesn't put anything in her novels that hasn't actually happened in history?
Ooh, I was gonna say that. Everything has to be.
Were you?
Yeah, because she when she wrote it, she wanted to make sure everything had a precedent, that it had happened before. So everything in this book, although it's fiction, is something based on something that's happened before, like controlling a woman's reproductive rights, for example, which surprisingly, it still happens today, even in places where it stopped, maybe.
It was banned in Portugal and in Spain.
Oh, the whole country.
Do you know that? Yeah, those are the countries that banned it. And then many others over the years, many other states and libraries and school boards and lots of people have banned this book. I'm taking a master class from her, so I'm getting lots of.
You got the inside scoop.
I sure did.
Cool. I like her. I saw her on. We used to have to take a little ferry to get to the Porter Airlines, which is in Toronto on the island, and now you can walk, but we used to have to get a ferry. She was on the ferry with me. She's very little. Like really, really, really little compared to me. So I was like, yeah. But I was like, oh, there's Margaret Atwood. But I didn't say anything. But I do like her. I admire her.
You should have seized the day. I know it's not so cool, but I would do it anyway.
Yeah.
You didn't talk to the Magic Man.
Oh, that's true.
Magic
when you had the opportunity.
You just said cryptic texts to me.
I'm in line behind the Magic Man. It's tough. Like, if you see somebody you admire in public, part of you wants to be like, I really admire your work, and part of you wants to give them their privacy to really show that you do respect them by respecting their private space.
Yeah.
And nobody didn't look like anyone approached her, so she was, and she's pretty famous, so.
But maybe you could have casually been near her and be like, oh. Margaret Atwood, whoa, sorry. I would do something like that.
Oops, sorry, I just banged into you by accident.
Do like try to like have a contrived meet cute.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
I guess I did with the Magic Man. What's his name again? Will something.
Arnett.
Will Arnett from Arrested Development.
Hilarious.
You know what? I wouldn't, because I can't keep it together. I couldn't even remember his name. I didn't even say Arrested Development in my text to Kim. It was just like, the Magic Man's in line with me at Whole Foods. And she's like, what?
You should have just gone, bees? I don't know. Do you watch Arrested Development? They go on about bees and beads.
That would be so random if you didn't mention Arrested Development, or
he would know. He acted it. He had to memorize the lines. It's not like he wasn't paying attention.
I'm sure people do that to him. He's probably like, oh God.
I know. I wouldn't do it.
Did you guys read this book in high school?
No.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
Yeah, that's when I first read it, and I just loved it. I mean, I loved all those kind of dystopian books, but it was just the way that she describes things is so clear and so vivid, and you feel, we were talking last season about not manipulating your emotions, but your emotions go on that journey for sure, with Offred and with all the characters, and the idea that could happen just seemed so at the one to also horrible, but also so that it could happen. Like, it just always felt so probable and so real that our society could go to that point, but then also just so scary as a woman and as a young woman, as a teenager when I first read it. Just seemed such a frightening thing that I've read it maybe 3 times, I think. And I don't really reread books. I know Kim doesn't, but I've read it 3 times. I have watched the series or some of it. I stopped watching after a while, but I've read the follow-up book. What's it called? The Testaments?
The Testaments?
Yeah, me too.
I'm going to read it next.
Yeah. So that's why I'm here to jump in, even though I was trying to scare you guys and it didn't work. But to
I'd like to also say we all read this in high school. We all also went to the same high school. Like
Yeah.
maybe that had something to do
Oh
with
yeah.
it.
So maybe
Right?
that's
Like-
why Kim didn't
and
go to
Kim
the same high
didn't.
school as us.
Yeah.
Right.
I haven't
So
read
is
it
this
since
your
high
first
school.
read?
Yeah.
Kim?
Yeah.
Whoa.
Oh, so what are you thinking so far?
I like it. Yep. And I'm a little shy of halfway through. So I'm enjoying it. I look forward to reading it. It's one of those books that I'm happy to put myself to bed early for. So that's really important because you know how I love TV time to the point of
Yeah.
not being able to go to bed even at the right time to get up the following day for work. So the book needs to be pretty good for me to shut down the TV an hour early, right? And it's good, even longer. Like that last night I was like, well, it didn't happen, so TV still won. But I thought about maybe even going to bed at 8:30 and just starting to read.
Wow.
But I watched a documentary instead.
But you didn't.
But I did.
I thought about it though. I haven't read it since high school, but I don't know. I just started it again.
Are you enjoying it? Do you find that you remember is it some parts are like new or?
I'm not going to remember all of it. I don't have a good recall on stories. Like even movies. If I've seen a movie before, I can watch the same movie over and over and be like, oh, I don't know. Right? Like it's like my brain will retain. I'm like, I don't need to retain this information for future use. So I will enjoy it that way. I've read other Margaret Atwood books, and she's a true master at her craft. So she's quite enjoyable to read, the way that she weaves a story, and she holds back so that she slowly feeds you the story out, and you don't get all the facts right up front. So I will enjoy it, I think. But I started watching the TV show just because. I don't know.
I'm saving it. Like you're doing it because
too.
you're reading it. I'm like, I can't watch that show now until I'm done this book.
No, do the book first. 'Cause
Absolutely.
then you'll have, yes. It's a little bit different. And also it's more frightening in your head, I think, than it is. I mean, it's still frightening on the screen, but it's more frightening in your head for sure.
Yeah, I forget how, because I know the end of the story. This is my 3rd reading, and because I've read the Testaments, which I find it interesting because the way they've done the characters in the sequel, they're in this book, so it changes my perceptions of them. So it's changing the story for me.
Oh, that's cool.
From reading the sequel. Like it,
you're having a new experience.
Yeah, so maybe Lindsay, you want to read it a 4th time? Because now that I'm reading it, it's changing some of, there's certain characters I hated in this book. And now it's a bit different. Because I know their backstory. Yeah, I know their backstory now. So
this goes back to that conversation we had where what your ideas of a person are based on your first impressions of them and when in their life you met them. So that's interesting because you thought one thing in the one book, and now that have the other book, you have a completely different idea of who they are.
It's a classic formula.
Such a master writer. Am I right?
VC Andrews used to do it too, though. She would do a 5-book series, and the first 4 books would be whatever version of Cinderella, basically. There'd be some evil person and a victim, and that victim would somehow rise up. And then the 5th book would be the backstory of the evil person. And then you'd be like, oh, they were only evil because they had their own evil person, or whatever, right?
They were also a victim.
Yeah.
And also we're getting everything from Offred's point of view, right? It's her perspective on the people that she's interacting with in her weird state is what perception you get. But then when it's flipped.
I want to bring something up or ask you something interesting. I always thought, her name is Offred, but which means of Fred, which means succession of Fred. And every single time I ever hear when they announce when people get married, not every time, but a lot of the time, they say Mr. and Mrs. and then the man's name and then the man's last name, right?
Mhm.
And most women take on men's names. And I wonder what you guys think about that in relation to that, and how the idea of the possession of the man having the possession of the woman if that's just not fiction, like this is happening still to this day. Even women who are strong women who are whatever still get announced as Mr. and Mrs. and the man's name. So
it's interesting. I just read a fiction book, and the main character, it's like based in the 1960s. It'll be on Manuscript Monday, but it's called Lessons in Chemistry. And one of the main characters, she doesn't want to get married because she doesn't want to be called Mrs. man's name, first name, man's last name. She's like, because then I'm going to lose my identity. I don't belong to you, right? And so, and that is something we still do, right? Try to explain that to kids. Be like, wait a minute, you used to have a different last name and then you changed it. Why didn't dad take your last name? Right? It's an interesting.
That's why I don't do
in
it.
Senegal, women don't change their last name. They are who they are. And so when I come, I've changed my last name to my husband's last name. So when I come with my passport, they always laugh at me because I have a very Senegalese last name. I come and they're like, oh yeah, Madame Diop. And I was like, yeah. And they're like, okay. And I was like, no, yeah, that's me. And my friends also from Spain, and they don't do that either. Their last name is their mother's and father's last name. And then they don't change it when they get married. So they're of their parents.
My kid's last name might be too long if we did that. It's already too long.
All three of you took your husband's last names, right?
No, Kim, you didn't.
Kim didn't. No. But you're married. Yeah, you are married because you got married in Mexico or something.
I'm married in Mexico anyway.
Oh, but now
Whoa!
I don't know the legalities of it. That's how important it is to me. I have no idea. Josh has maybe a certificate somewhere. It's more important to him.
But you kept your last name, same last name.
Yeah. And for me, like, I don't even care at all. It's about the paperwork. I'm like, I don't want to, where do I have to go? What do I have to fill out? Forget it. I'm not doing it. I'll keep my last name. Like, it's not like women power. It's like laziness. I have other things to do. I'll just keep my last name. Thank you.
Yeah, there's like a bank account where I couldn't change my last name for my maiden name to my current one without like mailing them my marriage certificate. And I was like, no. Like the original. And I was like, no. And there was no place I could go to in town in person to do it. And I was just like, no. And so I eventually just closed it. Right?
But
I couldn't
for real,
do
exactly.
anything.
I don't want any extra hassles. I don't need any extra fucking bureaucracy. So
yeah, and like I can use my maiden name or my current name. I think in BC you can use whatever you like, so it doesn't really matter. Something's happening on my computer. WhatsApp suddenly opened on its own for some reason.
Wow.
Maybe it's Lindsay sneaking in another way with a mask.
It's not even a mask. That's all I could find.
My house, a picture of a portrait of Laird. It's so scary.
It is kind of scary.
I know, it's not scary at all. He's smiling. Lovely picture.
It's not even a good painting.
But what's he looking at?
Exactly.
I don't know.
He's actually looking at
over
Meredith
there
in my screen.
Looking at Sarah and mine.
Book interrupted.
This interruption is brought to you by inappropriate church signs. You can't enter heaven unless Jesus enters you. Literally, that's what it said. Just in case anyone forgot, there it is in writing.
Book interrupted.
I just watched recently something from Cyndi Lauper. I know this is a random thing, but she was talking about in the States, the like reversal on Roe versus Wade. Yeah. And she was being interviewed by someone and she was basically saying, trying to explain, she's like, she's like, we're going backwards because she's like, do we really want the government in charge of our bodies? like having control over our bodies and how far can that go. And I listened to that this morning. She's being interviewed by someone, and it made me think of this book. Like that's where it starts. Like it makes me think of that character, the wife, the commander's wife, and how she was like Serena Joy, like how she was so fighting for this, and now she's like in it and clearly miserable in it. But she was fighting for this to happen. And then it was like, oh shit, now these guys are in charge of all of us. And I have to stay in my house. Yeah, all of us, not just the people that I'm against. Yes, I'm one of them now. Yeah, crazy. I think that's why this book is so scary, is because like we were saying, she's taken all these things from history. So these kind of things are fragile. Like the book is based in the US. Like,
when was the book written? What's the year?
30 years ago. Let me get it. Hold on.
You know what's interesting too about this book is that in it, they'll take pieces out of, say, the Bible, like quotes that they're feeding into the women that have to do various things, but they're leaving parts out. Which is like so today, where people they just pick the piece they want and like, see, this is what I like, but you're missing the main point, which is the moral of the story part of the end or whatever. This book is so, even though it was written a while ago and it's supposed to be a fictional place, it's very much topical for like,
even just the fact that, because they're saying, I think that it was pollution that has kind of caused whatever change. And so like I don't think I've gotten to like a main explanation, but what I can gather is that, you know, maybe some women are sterile or babies are not being born at the rate that they need to be born, and so we've got to take control of the women back so that we can control the production of the human race or whatever. And it's because of pollution. When she was describing that part, it just sounds like today and yesterday and probably tomorrow. You know what I mean? And then that's scary because it's like, oh, this is like, if we follow this is a way that could go, right? We don't just all burst into flame and die. Women become slaves. What?
And like, I mean, you get the impression too that the women have become slaves, not necessarily because they're like, well, we need to make sure the human race continues. It's because these people who are in power just want to have babies. And so they've got the power, and so they want to have all the things. So it's just like, how do we marry the women we want, but all that if they can't have babies and still have the babies we want? Right?
That's the only fictional part. Well, not really. I was just gonna say something pretty crazy. I was gonna be like, oh yeah, the men want the babies, as if. I mean, I guess some men want babies.
Well, I think they make a good point in the book that the women are being blamed if they don't get pregnant, but the men could be sterile too. So part of it might be that the men want to have babies to prove their manliness.
Yeah. Yeah, it's status. It's not nurturing anything. Yeah.
Yeah. The status of the whole thing.
It's everything is blamed on the women. Everything.
When I went through the fertility stuff, I think they try to make a point of making sure that it's like they continually will tell the woman of like, it might not just be you, it might not just be you, it could be your partner, like let's make sure we're testing both of you, kind of thing, to I guess reinforce, because I think as a woman, you take that on and you go, well, it's my fault, obviously I can't do this. And so I know now, and it's scary because it's true, because when I was there was not enough places for you to sit in the waiting room, which was really large. People were like standing on the walls and lineups and stuff to get in to be able to do this fertility stuff. And that was how many years ago? Like what, 5 or something? 4 years ago, 5 years ago. So it is happening. Like this is a real thing that's happening. There are a lot of people that are having fertility issues. So hopefully our society continues on that of being like, well, no, it could be both the male and the female, and let's, I don't know, try to work on it together, I guess, as opposed to what happens in this book.
Well, the thing that scares me about this is like the kind of whether it's willful ignorance or whatever, but like the whole time it took to get so polluted that now we're at this point, and like not knowing. But we do know, you know what I mean? But only once the kind of results are in. there's this big reaction instead of having all the information all along the way. Like the way that she like reflects back and is and kind of creates like the timeline of pollution sort of thing, you know what I mean? Like, but while it was happening, nobody cared enough until it created an issue. Like I feel like that's really true today.
An issue for the people at the top. It's not an issue it's only when it's an issue for the people that are
with power
at the top. Yeah.
On the hierarchical society. Yeah. And like, I feel like, but I also get scared because you know how sometimes it'll be like, butter's good for you. Butter's bad for you. Wait, butter's okay again. Like, so as you go through that, like what thing is getting through that we're using to, clean our water or whatever it is, we're using it because, oh, look at us humans. We're so smart. We hacked nature. But really 50 years later, it's like ovaries are exploding or whatever. And it's all because we've been touching receipts for 50 years.
Exactly what happened to me.
So like,
yeah,
that's freaky to me.
I kept on thinking about the receipts too. I'm like, I just keep on thinking about Kirsten Karchmer talking about those receipts. It's like, oh.
Like how many other things like receipts is happening at the same time?
Yeah,
exactly.
yes,
like steroids in the animals and like, like all of the stuff that society is using to be consumers. Like, how
not even to start with pharmaceuticals, like all the pharmaceuticals and so much that ends up in the water again and gets, recycled back into everybody, all the things, all the plastic in the ocean. We're like, yeah, plastic in the ocean. Well, we'll ban single-use plastics, but just this small amount. And just like the
just
incremental
at grocery
steps.
stores.
Like, like everyone's like, there's a big problem. We should do something. You're like, but we're just going to do whatever's going to cost us the least amount right now.
Yeah.
Right. Knowing that it's going to cost a lot down the road, but everybody just wants to kind of pass the buck. And I mean, I'm saying this as somebody who's living in, like a single family house, and I'm using electricity and I buy things in packages and, I try to recycle and stuff, but I'm also a consumer. I mean, I guess that's the point.
That's what's hard.
Frustrated and we all kind of still do it.
It's hard to know how to not do it when there's not a lot of
alternatives,
like leadership, and money in the other ways too, right? Because to be the example or whatever, it's like you have to spend 30% more than on your groceries if you want to, try to be part of the solution, because that's not affordable.
Right? Like I got this really nice sponge for washing the dishes.
Yeah.
And it's like, doesn't have plastic in it. The scrubby part's
$45.
It's like $10 for one sponge, right? Where you could buy like 15 of them
for $1.99.
And they fall apart and they send plastic down the sink. And but if people at the top made the things that were so damaging more expensive, then the other ones would, the demand would go up and they'd become cheaper and they'd be
right. Like there's a way.
It's a complete rabbit hole. Then you go down to like that. Okay, I'm gonna grow my own food, and then I don't have any waste. But then you get into the whole seed thing, and that's a whole other. Like the seeds are now being like created by these monster farm companies, and there's pesticides and herbicides in the seeds, and it's like it's so huge. The issue is like we were talking about in that last book, it's like it's just too overwhelming.
Yeah.
So then you're trying to
back
do
to
these
inaction.
little things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the people at the top are kind of isolated. Like if you have a lot of money,
they will feel it last.
Right. They're a little bit more isolated from the big picture. And then, like in the Handmaid's Tale, if they have the power, just say, well, like, who cares if I'm sterile, just make that person a slave and they can give me what I need or whatever. Yeah, I don't know.
There's women, I listened to a radio program about, there's quite a few couples, not just women, who are now actively choosing not to have children because of environmental issues. They feel like it's not the place that they want to raise children in. So there's like a whole movement of people that have decided to actively not have children, because actively not, I don't know what actively not.
No, you do have to take action to not have children.
Actively not have children.
Sometimes. Right?
Yeah.
Unless you avoid all the action.
Maybe.
No hot coffee.
No hot
Yeah.
coffee.
Coffee.
Just cream. No. Oh, God.
Just cream.
Or no
Ew.
cream, just
Ew.
coffee? Oh, just
Wrong.
coffee. Just coffee, no cream. Yes, it's funny. Like, I've had conversations with people about that, and they're like, I don't understand that. I was like, you don't understand that? I'm like, I think it's, that makes sense. If somebody is trying to make an environmental impact and they say, well, I'm just not going to have kids, right?
Hard
And-
because overpopulation is a problem, and also like
what kind of a world are they going to grow up in?
well, and a driving force to like the overproduction too, because of because we're a global economy now instead of more siloed. If everyone
Right.
was kind of producing for themselves, so it's just so crazy because like all of the
huge.
innovation of mankind was good, or so we thought, and then really the outcomes of it are so damaging, and like I don't know, it's just hindsight's going to be a real bitch on this one.
It's like Sapiens. It's like the
It is,
Sapiens
yeah.
book, how he was like, farming was bad for us.
Yeah,
We
even though it seemed like a
hunter-gatherers,
good
we had a
thing.
better life.
Yeah.
And now we're in this trajectory that we can't stop.
It's that separation of nature. You know what I mean? And that brings me back to the whole kind of indigenous lifestyle, original anyways, traditional indigenous before contact, and the understanding of the interconnectivity of everything. I don't know where it happened with man and they separated in those ways, but ever since then, that's the beginning of the end.
Well,
It's a
that's
really
depressing.
great
I'm depressed
episode.
now.
There we go.
Ooh.
God.
The world is ending.
Yeah, that's what this
Over.
Join us again, or don't. The world is over by the
If you
time
can
we
make
meet
it.
next.
That's what it feels like though when you talk about it, when you go down the rabbit hole or think about it or whatever. Like,
Yes.
If you've enjoyed these video highlights, listen to the full episode on our YouTube channel or wherever you get your podcasts. Remember to like and subscribe and ring that bell to be notified when new episodes are published. Find out more by going to www.bookinterrupted.com.
never forget, every child matters.